Excellent. Yay. So again, welcome everyone to our December Urban Devi. My name is Andrea, and I am super excited, along with my co-host Rukmini Prabhu, to welcome Nanda-Nandana Dasi, who will be our speaker for today. And I just want to briefly read her amazing bio so that we can get to know her a little bit if you haven't had a chance. So Nanda-Nandana Dasi is a disciple of Hridayananda Dasa Goswami, has served in ISKCON as a cook, teacher, and leader. And in 1992, she joined ISKCON in Boston, Massachusetts, where she served as a head cook, preparing deity offerings and managing the kitchen, as well as cooking for feasts, festivals, public programs, and events. Oh, I'm getting hungry just reading about that. Nanda-Nandana Dasi has trained in and taught seminars in nonviolent communication, mediation, leadership training, and Bhakti Sastri. Nanda-Nandana is currently living at the Krishna House in Gainesville, Florida, where she manages and trains cooks in the kitchen department and occasionally teaches seminars and Gita classes, and leads spiritual discussions at public events for the Krishna House Bhakti Academy. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Nanda-Nandana Dasi.
Thank you for having me.
And let's go ahead and spotlight you so everybody can see you, and you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, cool.
Wait, can I just butt in for a second, Nanda-Nanda? Can you say something about Krishna lunch? Because in your bio, there was nothing about Krishna lunch, but maybe some people who just joined don't know about, just a few words.
Yeah. Krishna lunch. I actually used to manage Krishna lunch for a few years, and then I got tired. And when I was managing Krishna lunch, I didn't get to cook so much, which is what I actually like to do. I liked managing Krishna lunch, but I really enjoy cooking, so I switched over. So Krishna lunch is a prasadam distribution program on the campus at the University of Florida, and we serve somewhere between 1,000 to 1,400 people a day. And it's great because the students all come. It's a part of the UF tradition that they even say it in the UF orientation guide or something. It says the top 25 things to do, and one of them is before you graduate, go to Krishna lunch. So, and a lot of people often refer to it as Krishna. So if you sit on the campus, sometimes I would sit on the campus and chant my rounds, and I'd hear people walk by and go, I love Krishna. We should go get Krishna tomorrow. So it's a really nice program. And then we invite the students for public programs at the Krishna House. And then we invite them to try out spiritual life for a semester. And they often end up staying much longer than a semester. And it's just a really great program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's see. So this is a big topic. I just wanted to touch on some basics, and I always encourage people to go and do research afterwards. You know, we have about 45 minutes to talk, and then we'll have some, questions from what I understand afterwards in a breakout session. So we can really touch on these things, but even just knowing a few basic tips can greatly improve people's relationships with each other. So I just want to go over those with all of you and have a little discussion. And so when I'm talking about building strong relationships or healthy relationships, I don't just mean romantic relationships. I'm talking about all kinds of relationships. And that may be in the devotee world and outside of the devotee world. There is a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that describes how one should properly deal with all living beings. And you can, of course, go and read a little more about this on your own, but this is from the 11th canto, the 11th canto, 3rd chapter, 23rd verse. And the context is that it's someone asking how to get out of the illusion of the material world, and the answer is approach a guru. And so it's really talking about not only how one should behave with the guru, but just with all living beings. It's not just that because somebody has a high status or a high position that we treat them respectfully, and everyone else we treat horribly because they're not in that high position. And so it's really reinforcing that point. So read the verse. A sincere disciple should learn to dissociate the mind from everything material and positively cultivate association with his spiritual master and other saintly devotees. He should be merciful to those in an inferior position to him, inferior just meaning junior. Cultivate friendship with those on an equal level and meekly serve those in a higher spiritual position. Thus, he should learn to deal properly with all living beings. So this can be a helpful starter for us, is that, yes, we treat everybody respectfully, but we have different kinds of relationships, and how we deal with those relationships, maybe based on what kind of relationship it is, but there's certain basic fundamental principles that are true to all of those relationships. And I'll get into that a little bit later. And someone just asked, oh, this is from the 11th canto, 3rd chapter, 23rd verse, for those who are asking. Okay, so you've got your how you relate to people who are senior to you, how you relate to your peers, and how you relate to those who are junior to you. And again, this can be in spiritual relationships, this can be in working relationships, it can be in different aspects of your life. And so just that not all your relationships have to be exactly the same. You know, what you share with your peers may be very different from what you share with juniors. And that, again, that doesn't make those other relationships any less important. It's just that knowing what those relationships are, you can act accordingly. And so I'm going to read one more text, and then I want to get into, I want to get your feedback on some things. In the Nectar of Instruction, Rupa Goswami in text 4 talks about how you can have loving exchanges. And so he gives 6 symptoms of loving exchanges. There is actually 3. It's an exchange. So there's 3 components, but it's a reciprocal exchange. So offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasad and offering prasad are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. And so in the purport, Prabhupada explains his explanation of revealing the mind in confidence is that an experienced devotee explains and an inexperienced devotee learns from him. And so that's just one of the kinds of relationships. That's like a junior to a senior. When it's peers, it may be that both people just exchange what's on their mind with each other and get feedback from each other. When it's a junior, you may ask them to share what they may be feeling and help guide them through their feelings. So these exchanges can take place amongst these different relationships. So, and of course, in each of these relationships, you can have a really unhealthy exchange, or you can have a very healthy exchange. So what I want to talk about and hear from you is, what are the components of a healthy relationship? So one thing that I had mentioned was respect, right? A respectful exchange. What are some other components or qualities that you feel are crucial or at least helpful to a healthy relationship? And maybe someone can type it in the chat as we list them. Good listener. Okay. Compassionate. Yep. Humility. Yes. Humble. Being humble. Deep listening. That's a good one. Yes. Growth mindset. That's good. That's good. I like that. Seeking to serve. Yep. Yeah. Eye contact. Good, good. Any other ideas?
Sorry, I put up curiosity. It's just going to Andrea.
Oh, curiosity. Okay. Okay.
It's okay. I figured that's why I kept typing it. Sorry.
Okay, that's a good list to start with. And then, you know, people can add to it as we discuss, because there may be some other ideas that pop up. Let's see, said mood is love and affection, empowering others, in well-wishing mood. Okay, good. These are great. Showing interest in their lives. Yeah. Speaking for myself and asking, we know these things theoretically, right? They all sound great. They all look great. How often are we able to do it? This is what the challenge is practicing these virtues. Validation. Yeah. Sometimes people get passionate. Sometimes we may get triggered, and it's maybe hard to follow these things. And so, of course, we can always learn from these experiences when these things aren't present to practice in the future. So I'll tell you some things that I wrote down, which I guess are similar to, in fact, I think what I'll do is just go through. What I did was wrote down some ideas, some qualities, and their dictionary definition, so we can really go a little deeper into seeing what exactly they mean and how we feel we can see how effective they can be as helping to build these relationships. So the top of my list is communication. And the other qualities that I've written down, the other list that I've made, to me, I feel like falls under the heading of communication. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So communication, my other qualities are respect, right? So you communicate with respect. You're caring, which somebody wrote, it's like showing interest in their lives and curiosity, seeking to serve. Yeah, respect, caring. Okay. Oh, you're writing it down. I thought someone was thinking of these things at the same time. Understanding, communicating with trying to understand others. Trust, confidence, sincerity, honesty, being non-judgmental, and having healthy boundaries. These are some of the things that I wrote down, and I'll give you a definition of each one because it'll really help us to see a little deeper. So communication, interesting definition, the successful conveying or sharing of ideas and feelings. So I feel as though when you have these other qualities as part of your communication, you can successfully convey or share ideas and feelings. So respect, the definition is to have due regard for their feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of another person, avoiding harm or interference, and agree to recognize and abide by. And when I saw that agree to recognize and abide by, I thought of healthy boundaries, right? Because to be respectful means to respect boundaries. It means that you are going to abide by the boundaries that this person has set. And if you don't know what they are, you can clarify, or they can also clarify for you. Then caring, displaying kindness and concern for others. So it's all kind of intertwined, actually. Understanding. One thing I do want to make clear with understanding is you may understand why someone's doing it, but it doesn't mean that you have no boundaries, right? So if someone's abusive, for example, in their communication, you may understand why they're abusive. They may have had a difficult childhood, or they may be hot-headed, or whatever the case may be. You may understand that, but it doesn't mean you have to tolerate it, right? So there may be ways where you step aside and say, this is not something that I'm willing to tolerate, but you can still be understanding. So the definition, sympathetically aware of other people's feelings, tolerant and forgiving. Again, tolerant and forgiving. I may forgive you for the way you spoke to me, but it doesn't mean that I'll allow it. Understanding, also perceive the intended meaning of words, a language, or a speaker. So I think someone had written that. Did you try to understand what they're saying and understand their meaning? Because they say body language is a big part of communication too. Someone may say something, yeah, I'm fine, and you know that they're not. So you may ask for further clarification, and there's ways to get people to, and this is what I would encourage people to do, is watch videos about, you can find so much information on YouTube watch videos about good communication. How do you get people to reveal what they really are feeling and thinking? Especially if you watch coaching videos, because coaches, that's their job, is to get people to talk about what it is they're going through and how they can resolve those issues, like a life coach, coaching, or just in general communication skills. To be sympathetic. So again, this is under understanding. Be sympathetically or knowledgeably aware of the character or nature of. And the example they give is, I understand how you feel, right? So trying to understand people's feelings. The definition of trust: firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. And then it said, we understand that relationships, they have to be built on trust, right? If you don't have trust, you can't really have a relationship. I mean, the relationship you have would be very surface level. You may work in an office where you don't really trust your boss, but you do what you can within boundaries to maintain your job. You do what the work is that you're asked to do. And yeah, you may not trust him or her, but does it actually affect your life negatively, whether or not you can trust them? Yeah, it may not affect it at all. And it's just, you have a duty to do. You're there to do a job and to provide for your family. So you may not need necessarily trust for that relationship, a deep trust. But in other situations, you will need a deep trust with a significant other. You'll need trust with a good friend. You'll need trust. Otherwise, you can't really openly communicate with each other. And without communication, your relationship will die. Confidence, the telling of private matters or secrets with mutual trust. Sincerity, the quality of being free from pretense, deceit, or hypocrisy. And I know these are all very similar. Honesty, free of deceit and untruthfulness, or sincere. So it's all kind of, again, they're all kind of a similar, overlapping with each other. Non-judgmental, I find this one really important. Having or displaying an excessively critical point of view is what the definition of judgmental. When someone is judgmental, it doesn't, I think my biggest problem with being judgmental is that it doesn't solve anything. It doesn't move forward the conversation. It's just, here's why I think you're a horrible human being. Any questions? It's like, well, okay, so now what? Are we going to try to solve this? Are you going to give me tips on how to not be a horrible human being? It doesn't really do anything for anybody. It's not really, there's healthy judgment where you may judge a situation. Is this a safe situation? Is this not? But being judgmental where you're just putting someone down, it just allows you to walk away feeling superior and them to be left behind feeling lost. Now what? There's nothing you've done to actually help them. And we'll talk about a few examples of that. I can talk about some experiences I've had. And then healthy boundaries. Again, you may be understanding, you may be compassionate, but you have to have boundaries, what you will and won't tolerate. And that doesn't mean you can control how someone treats you, but you can control what you will and will accept. Right. So sometimes the example they give is, let's say you're the type of person who has to leave your phone on at night. You have to leave the ringer on. Maybe for emergencies, you have some sort of job. And you have a friend or a partner who needs to call you at 2 a.m. on a regular basis to talk, and you must be available. So you can't stop them from calling, but you can decide not to pick up the phone, right? So you can tell that person, I won't be picking up the phone at 2 a.m. to talk, rather than telling them, you have to stop calling me at 2 a.m. It's a way of telling them, it's like, I'm not here to control you. I'm just letting you know what's acceptable for me and what's not. And so sometimes that actually helps a person. They can see, because it turns into negotiations. Otherwise, it's like, don't call me at 2. Well, you're such a jerk. Why don't you, it just can go back and forth. It's like, well, I am going to call it 2. It's like, well, you're waking me up. It's like, well, and it could go back and forth, but just say, I won't be picking up. And they may be trying to argue about it, but that's when you decide, does this person respect my boundaries? Maybe they'll call a couple times and then they'll get the point and they'll actually learn something. Maybe they won't learn. Maybe it's a relationship you'd have to step away from eventually. Or maybe they will learn and it's a relationship you won't have to step away from. So, trying to help others or to have others help us, if it's done constructively, can actually help build a strong relationship. Okay, so I would like to go back and talk about a few examples in this realm, but first I want to see if anybody has any questions or points or anything they want to share or anything they want to add to the list.
So Rukmini Kanari Prabhu wrote in the chat, within NVC, nonviolent communication, compassionate communication, the aspect on universal human needs, in addition to focusing on strategies, makes the most difference.
So compassionate communication, you're saying compassionate communication makes the most difference. People knowing that you actually care. Is that correct?
What I'm saying is that within nonviolent communication, the aspect of universal human needs is integral. It's part of it. So it's not like it's separate thing, compassionate. It's just another name. Like there's another, the CNVC, the New York one, they're really focusing on that. So it's also called compassionate communication, but
right.
It's not a unique branch. It's just part of that. It's an extension of it.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's another. Nonviolent communication is a great tool to learn. If anybody wants to look into that, it's just a great tool to use. It's great to learn. It can really make a huge difference in how you communicate with others. Okay, so I want to go through one moment. Just get back up to my notes. So I want to talk a little bit about caring. I know from my own experience, if I know someone cares, I can tolerate a lot within boundaries again, but I can tolerate a lot. If someone behaves perfectly but doesn't care, it's kind of irrelevant to me. I don't care about their perfection. I care about whether they care, So when people know you care about them, you don't have to be perfect. You may, none of us will be always perfect 100% of the time in our communication, but people can forgive a lot if they know you actually care about them. And so there's many different ways that we communicate that may show that we don't care. And actually, I do want to talk about those, the different forms of communication that I have noticed over time with different people. So just a few different types of communication. One I call beat the clock communication. That's when it's a race against time to get even half a sentence out before someone talks over you for a really, 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 really long time. And so you may wait for them to finish what they say and try to go back to what you were saying. And before you get that half a sentence out, they're already talking over you again. So just a quick question again, if people want to just type a few answers into the chat. What do you feel like is going on in that kind of communication? How do they see you, or if you're doing it to someone else? And that's another point I wanted to make. When we go through these things, it's human nature that many different people that we've met in our lives pops into our head. Yep, they did this to me. They communicate. But we should also think about whether or not we've done it or whether or not we do it. So we can learn both ways. We can remember by experience what someone else may have done to us, and we could also think about what we may have done to others. So something to keep in mind. But how does it beat the clock communication? Okay, so yeah, making assumptions, irrelevant. What else?
Pride.
What's that?
Pride.
Pride, okay. Okay, for me, I get tired because like someone talking over another, they're impatient, but they could also feel stuck on an issue. Yeah, it's true. Self-absorbed, they're not interested in what you're speaking. Inability to listen, and sometimes people have not had the experience of being truly heard, right? So they go on and on. The opposite of everything listed above, right? Okay, so I've noticed it's different. I've had people talk over me because they're angry and they've already decided what I think and what I feel. So there's no point in me even explaining because it's I'm either just making excuses or whatever. They've already predetermined. The other one I've had is people are just nervous. They don't know what to say and they can't listen because they're so nervous. They're trying to think of what to say next because they don't want the awkward silence. And so it's hard for them to pause and listen. The other thing I've seen is they're just super excited. And sometimes I've, joked with them like, sometimes I'll either joke with them if I know them really well, like, so there's just other half of that sentence that I'd like to go back to. And they might laugh and just apologize. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just excited. Sometimes I might just go back to it later. I might just go back and say, after they're done talking, I might just say, back to what I was saying. And that may even bring, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you weren't done. Sometimes they just think you're done, or they just didn't hear. And a big thing in this day and age is, especially if you're talking on the phone, they're most likely looking at their phone. They're most likely reading something. And so they're not really hearing that you're speaking and they just start speaking. So that's a big one in this age, is distraction. So yeah, that's the beat the clock. That's like, you feel like you ran a marathon, you're trying so hard to get words in and you get tired and you finally maybe give up after a while. Then there's the silent response communication, where you may say something to somebody about yourself. Yeah, I really have a bad headache today. And the response you get, okay, so did you hear me? And so you're not really sure, did the person hear you? And then sometimes I'll just experiment and pause and just wait and see what's going to happen next. And what I've seen sometimes is they just go on to the next subject about themselves. And so again, I would say, I don't know if you all want to say what you feel in that situation, but what I feel like is they don't care. That's kind of the first thing I feel, is maybe they don't care. I've had people say they just didn't know what to say. And because I've asked them, sometimes I'll say something and you're just silent. And then, I've heard different things like, well, I didn't want to interrupt. Okay, well, what about the long pause afterwards? It's like, well, I don't know. And they just kind of don't know, or they might say, I just didn't know what to say. So I'll always tell somebody, well, just at least acknowledge, just say, oh, I'm sorry to hear that you have a headache, or, you don't have to solve everyone's problems for them. Sometimes people don't know what to say because they don't know what the solution is, but you're not looking for a solution. You're just sharing that you have a headache and you just want someone to care maybe. And so you may just, in our own communication, you may just at least acknowledge, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, or, whatever. Just something that shows that you're actually listening. They didn't want to criticize if you're talking about a problem. Yeah, they're afraid to offend a Vaishnava. Some may be self-absorbed, but they focus on their pain points because they trust in sharing, communicating with you. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. And so again, from our side, if there's compassion and understanding, we may just try to understand why somebody, rather than jumping to conclusions, we may feel like, okay, this person doesn't care. But if we ask them, I've noticed sometimes they say things and you're silent. They may say those things. Yeah, I just didn't know what to say. And, so that can open up communications, because a relationship can really spiral down quickly when there are assumptions made that aren't communicated. That's why communication is so important. Then there's the kind of condescending conversation, or the manipulative one, or dishonest or insincere. Those are a big challenge. Those are sometimes ones that I may just step away from. If it's someone I know well enough, I may point out that I feel like it's condescending. And they may not admit to it, but they may at least try to change it next time. Manipulative, I'd say there's two of all the people I've met all these years, there are two people in my life who I have kept complete distance from because of manipulation. I just decided that I tried to work with it. I tried to see if we can change that communication, and it didn't happen, and it always ended up being manipulative. So I just decided, and it's rare that I do that. It's rare that I just step away from someone, but sometimes it's just necessary. If a person is just trying to manipulate you or put you down, again, it's not something you have to accept. It's not behavior that you have to keep in your life. A relationship means how two people relate to one another. And so relationship shouldn't be something that's a constant cause of maybe feelings of insecurity, or feeling like you're being, like someone's gaslighting you, or like it starts making you second guess yourself constantly. You're feeling unmotivated. You want to look out for those things. But in general, then there's judgmental communication or no communication at all. So judgmental, we spoke about, it doesn't really solve anything. And again, that could be pointed out to someone. It may be a habit they learned growing up, is to be judgmental. Maybe their parents were judgmental. And even just expressing that to someone, I really would appreciate some feedback, some constructive feedback that can help me change my bad habits. That might help them change their bad habit. It might help them to say, oh, well, okay, let me switch gears here. Let me see how I can help. And that might make a person feel even better about their communications. And so they may change that. So I feel at least there should always be an attempt with someone, if possible, to tell them how you feel. And this is part of nonviolent communication, really, is telling people how you feel, rather than saying, you're a judgmental person. You would say, I felt like maybe I was being judged, and I always tell people, I could be wrong. This is how it came across to me. And they may either say, yeah, sorry, I just, that's what I was learned growing up. Or they may say, no, I'm sorry it came across to you. I wasn't judging you at all. This is what I was thinking. And so you can always have a clear understanding between people. So that's, no communication is someone's just decided something terrible about you. I had this experience once with a good friend who all of a sudden, out of the blue, I was sitting at home, I get this email, and it's a really, really, really long email about how angry they are at me. To me, it came out of nowhere. It came out of left field, and I thought, what the heck? And I was married at the time, and my husband said, don't answer right away. Wait 2 days, because he knew I was hot-headed. And he knew that I would just strike back with all my logic and reasoning. And okay, so I said, okay. I was upset, but I put it aside for 2 days. And after 2 days, I cooled down. And then he said, just tell her to meet and talk. It's not going to work out very well through email. It can be much bigger misunderstandings via email. So I told her, let's meet and talk. And we cleared it up in probably about 30 seconds flat. It went so fast just speaking in person. And her method was the no communication method at first. She said, I thought you would know I was mad at you because I was avoiding you. And I said, no, when you said you were busy, I just thought you're busy. I just took your word for it. So what I need is for you to tell me directly. Don't worry about telling me directly that you're angry at me for something. And she said, okay. And it just never happened again. That kind of stuff never happened again. We just kept communication open. So that could have gone horribly wrong. I could have just responded. We could have gone back and forth, angry emails, and just fine, we'll never talk again or whatever. But that was her method. And then she saw that method doesn't actually work. She sincerely thought that by not communicating with me, I would understand the communication. And she was good to say that, okay, I see that actually didn't work. And in the future, I'll actually communicate. So I think that oftentimes when the relationships get more intimate, that tends to happen more often. People are afraid maybe to hear someone say that maybe in a significant other, you might be afraid to hear them say, yeah, I pretty much don't love you anymore. So you may not want to communicate because you're afraid that's what they're going to say. And then it just gets worse and worse. And amongst friends, you might feel like, oh, they're about to betray me. I could feel it. And it's not true at all, but you stop communicating because you're afraid that might be the case. Let's see. Someone said I had a long email experience. This is Karuna Shakti. I had a long email experience. I immediately thought this person has no idea what they are talking. I couldn't have done anything wrong. I started listening to myself, all the reasons why I couldn't have been wrong. So I responded, I think there has been a misunderstanding. But she responded with a long list of all the things I've done. The most interesting thing was that all the things in her list were the same reasons as why I want wrong. I don't understand that part. Maybe a typo.
I think what they're trying to say is that they made a list of all the reasons why they weren't wrong, and it ended up being all the things that the other person was listing that made them wrong.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Silent treatment. Yeah, exactly. Sarcasm, passive aggressiveness. Again, it doesn't help the situation. It just leads to further miscommunication, further misunderstandings. And so wonderful when things are finally spoken out. So that was the no communication, one of the no communication experiences I've had. I've had others. So going back to healthy communication, just that we were talking about, be clear and concise, express your feelings, your needs, interests, and concerns, as they say, maybe your expectations. I had a very interesting conversation with someone once. They were, my experience in life is that when someone's not making sense, when someone's not logical, it means they're emotional. So when something's not making sense, it means they're not saying something that is really on their mind. So I had the experience of saying that to someone once. He was talking in circles and what he was saying just wasn't making sense at all. And he was a very intelligent person. And so I don't know, it just somehow it came out of me. I said, what you're saying is not logical. So I'm assuming there's something you're not telling me. And he said, yeah, actually, here's what I'm really feeling. And I was so shocked. I thought I would have to spend a lot more time trying to dig it out, but he said it right away. And he said, actually, what I'm feeling is this. And I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. Now I can address that issue, actually. And then again, the conversation went very smoothly and very quickly after that. So I would sometimes even say that as a tip. When you see somebody being really illogical and not making sense, there's something that they're afraid to say. And you might try to help them bring it out. Is there something you're feeling that you're afraid to tell me? Or is there something you're not saying? Or maybe they don't even know what it is and you can help them bring it out. And same with ourselves. When we realize we're not being logical, is there something we're afraid to say to somebody? And why are we afraid to say it? Okay, sorry. Sometimes I read the chat and then I realize it's what I just said. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, so respectful. We talked about being respectful, listening, attentively, being considerate, respecting boundaries. Don't try to force confidentiality on someone. I had a friend, not here in Gainesville, somewhere else. I had a friend who loved gossip. It was her favorite pastime. And we knew that she didn't maintain confidentiality. We knew that. So we just behaved accordingly in the friendship. Most of us wouldn't share what was on our mind because we knew that it would just move right to the next person. And so often I would stop her when she tried to breach confidentiality from somebody else. So she would start off by saying, they told me not to tell anyone, but, and I would stop her there. I would say, well, then I'm someone. And oftentimes what she said to me was, yeah, but I know you won't tell anybody. Yeah, but I'm someone. They said not to tell anyone. It doesn't matter if I won't tell anyone. I'm someone. And maybe they don't want me to know. I'm another person that they may not want to know. And what if I think I have a friend who won't tell anybody and I tell them and they have a friend that won't tell anybody? Then you have a breach of confidentiality. And no one is going to open up and share if there's a breach of confidentiality. No one's going to do that because they know it's going to get around. And so we would sometimes have to, we had a funny situation one time where someone took me aside to tell me something quick before she came back. And I don't know why they chose that time, but as she turned around and was coming, what are you guys talking about? And so just nothing, never mind, so we don't want to be that person. We don't want to be that person that someone feels that they have to hide things from and they can't come to us with anything because, again, it doesn't take a person seriously when you breach their confidentiality and they can't trust you. So they know that just by seeing how you breach other people's confidentiality, you're not the person they're going to come to. And you should also know that, see that as a red flag. That's not the person you should reveal your mind to. You should reveal your mind to someone who respects your confidentiality. Okay, so we go until what time? 11:50 before the breakout session?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I can just tell people I'm here for you if you want to talk. That's all I can say. If they want to talk to me, they will. And if they don't, they won't. But we can't force it on them. And again, try to listen with understanding. Again, it shows people that you actually care and that you're not just judging them. Okay, here's another big one that I've seen, and you guys may know this, and I know that sometimes even comedy shows make jokes about it, but the I'm just being honest expression of I was just really rude to you, but I'm just being honest. So oftentimes people conflate honesty with rudeness. So I can give an example of an experience that I've had, and maybe you guys can think of experiences that you've had that either you may have said to someone or someone may have said to you. This was probably 20 years ago. I'm always somewhere cooking. And so I can't even remember what it was I cooked. I had made something and it was being served out. And I think the devotee standing right next to me didn't know that I'd cooked it. And he was like, these are terrible. And then I was like, okay. So, and then he goes, oh, did you make them? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm just being honest. So I said, okay, but you could say it in a little nicer way, maybe next time. And he said, and there was another devotee in the room, and he said, and this is where all the kind of misunderstandings started to take place. He said, what, you expect everyone to like everything you make? And I said, no, I just expect them to not be rude. And then it was kind of like well, they're just being honest. And I said, I'm not saying they're being dishonest. I'm just saying they're being rude, so in that situation. So then I realized that this conversation wasn't going anywhere. The people in the room were, maybe he felt guilty for saying it out loud and was just trying to make up for it. And the other person was trying to cover for him. But I realized that, I think I might have asked one more time, are you actually listening to what I'm saying? And I think they were trying to turn it into a joke eventually, but I just decided to leave the room. I didn't do it with drama. I didn't slam the door or anything or go stomping out, but I just said, okay, well, Hare Krishna. And I just brought my lunch upstairs. So, these are, we don't want to conflate being honest with being rude. Maybe someone just doesn't want our opinion, or maybe if we give it, we should give it in a sensitive manner. Oftentimes if I don't like something someone cooked, I'll keep my mouth shut. And if they ask me if I liked it, I'll be really, really sensitive how I say it. I might say, I might give them a tip. If it came out too dry, I might give them a tip to make it a little more moist. Or I might say, I prefer it a different way. Or I might say, I prefer less salt, but other people might like, I'm really sensitive about how I say it, because for me, I feel like this person just spent a few hours trying to cook something nice for everybody. I'm not going to have the first thing I say be a put down or just, totally just disregard all the effort that they put into it. So we don't want to conflate honesty, rudeness with honesty. We can be honest, as Prabhupada says, to speak the truth in a palatable manner, right? And yeah, and there it is. Lori is writing this. Ask the 4 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial? Is it timely? Yeah, those are great questions to ask yourself before you say something. Yeah, comedies. Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard age where I think less and less people are learning how to communicate effectively, especially now with texting. People don't have to communicate. They don't have to call people. They can just text, and the texts are just abbreviations. And whether or not people learn manners, I don't know. It's becoming a difficult age. So we just have to work with it. How can we work with people and try to improve these communications? So we just have a few minutes left. Okay, I wanted to just quickly, we have 4 minutes, and I just wanted to give 3 scenarios. And then this is going to lead to the breakout group. So I'll try to get it done in now 3 minutes. I had an experience where, speaking of the 3 types of relationships, I had the experience as the junior. And I'll just tell you what I did in each experience. And then we're going to go into breakout groups and kind of talk about that. So I've had experiences where senior devotees ask me questions, and they really want to hear the answer. They're really trying to understand me, and they keep the conversation confidential. Now, in that situation, in all of these situations, I behave according to the etiquette of that relationship. In that situation, no problem. I'm so grateful for their help. I want to reciprocate. I'm very happy to do whatever I can to serve them. And the relationship is very strong, and it's actually mutually beneficial. And I find I can reveal my mind to them. I've had a situation where a senior devotee asks me questions, but doesn't really wait for the answer, or they only hear just the part of the answer that makes the answer the opposite of what I was trying to convey. And so then there's misunderstanding, and it's very hard for me to get a word in to try to correct it. It's a little bit of a struggle. And then I've had, and in that situation might be the situation where even though I've been in the movement for 30 years, they still may talk to me like I just joined yesterday, right? So they preach accordingly, right? It's like, here's what I have to tell you, which is okay. For me, I feel like at least they're trying to give me some knowledge. So again, I still behave the same way with them. I'm still grateful. I'm still give them the proper respect that they deserve. And the relationship stays healthy, but I can't really reveal my mind to that person. I don't feel like they actually understand me, but I appreciate them trying to help me. And so again, that relationship still stays within good, healthy boundaries because I'm not just lashing out whenever they interrupt me or whatever. And then I've had the situation where a senior devotee may jump to conclusions about me and preach to me based on those conclusions. They might ask me leading questions like, don't you think you should do it this way? While they're nodding, it's like, don't you think you should do it this way? And they haven't understood that I actually do it that way, or that I don't even think that at all. And so in that situation, again, I'm going to give them the respect you should give to another senior. In fact, you should give respect to everybody. But definitely that's someone I may keep my distance from. I'll keep the relationship healthy, but I'll do it by keeping an appropriate distance. I'll do service for them if needed. But one thing I always do in these situations is I take note of how it makes me feel. I try to think about whether I do that to others. Maybe Krishna is trying to teach me something. And then I try to avoid doing that with others in the future. I have it as a learning situation. But in all cases, the respect remains. I'm going to respect that person, even if it's from a distance. And this is just a quick example how relationships can remain healthy. how you can, how you can just keep the relationships healthy, and they may not necessarily be super strong relationships, but at least it's healthy. So I know, okay, so it's 11:50 now. I want to I'm so happy that you guys keep things within the time boundaries. It's very nice, because people coming to the meeting know they're going to get exactly what you said you're going to give them, and they don't wonder when they can escape. Okay, so I guess we can do the breakout questions now.
Yeah.
If you want to go ahead and do that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nanda-Nandana.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I thank you for appreciating our attempts to be timely.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, we know that a lot of the Vaishnavis really enjoy the time in the breakout groups where we get to, and please, if you want to take a quick bathroom break, please do so. I'm just going to explain the question, and then I will open up breakout groups so that we can get that done. And afterwards, after we do the breakout groups, remember there's going to be time for us to share our thoughts from the breakout groups. And we're also going to have time for some Q&A. So I know that there's been some questions that have been posted to the chat, and others have also sent me some questions anonymously. So we'll try to get to all those questions after the breakout groups as well. Okay, so our question for today, we have a really great question by Nanda-Nandana Prabhu. So we're going to think of an experience you had with someone where you could have communicated better. What qualities were missing from the communication, and how would those qualities have possibly changed the outcome? So I will also be sending this question to everyone in the breakout group. So don't worry if you didn't quite get that. But first, let me just pause the recording now. So again, welcome everybody back from your breakout sessions. So we'd love to hear your realizations from the breakout sessions. Rukmini Prabhu or Nanda-Nandana Prabhu, would you like to start?
Nanda, please. You're on mute, I think.
Yeah, you're still muted, Prabhu.
All right, hold on. Okay, am I good now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just to see, well, I think one thing, and I don't know if anybody else got this from the breakout sessions, is that we can see that none of us has had perfect communication all the time, right? We can think of a situation typically. So we want to learn from that. We don't want to just be too hard on ourselves that I didn't make the list of all these perfect aspects of communication, but just to say, all right, let me analyze what happened in the past and try to work towards the future of improving communication. That's what one of the descriptions of the mode of goodness is, a careful study of the past and future, actually. Mm-hmm. So, right, mode of ignorance is dwelling in the past. Mode of goodness is learning from the past. Right, so you may dwell and just say, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm such a loser. It was such a blah, 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 blah." You know, it just goes on, and it doesn't get anywhere. But studying and saying, "Okay, this happened in this communication. Here's what I could have done better. Here's where I can improve." I'm going to maybe even go online and watch, do some research to see if I could find some tips how to improve in the future. So just seeing that, yeah, nobody typically has perfect communication.
Yeah.
Rukmini Prabhu?
Oh, I was just going to say, I really liked what Nanda said before about, this really, really struck me about when someone's sort of speaking and not making sense, to just kind of, in a sense, like almost like a kind probing, like, is there something that you're not telling me that, is there, like looking for the sort of the meta message underneath the kind of emotional outburst, or, is there something that I've said that's made you feel uncomfortable? Is there something I've done, or, just kind of that kind of, I really appreciated that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I also wanted to say, I on this topic of honesty, and sometimes, I've had this experience, well, maybe once or maybe more than once, when someone is, kind of wanting to kind of not feel guilty about breaking the principles of Krishna consciousness. And they go to this place of, well, I'm just tired of pretending, and I'm just going to be honest. I'm tired of pretending. I'm just going to be honest. And so, that's why there's, all of these evidences of inappropriate behavior in the situation. May it be drinking or smoking or this or that or the other thing, but I'm just tired of pretending. I just want to be honest. So just could you give your thoughts on that, Nanda?
Yeah, absolutely. Ravindranath Prabhu talks about this in his Cure of Souls seminar, and the crux of the issue often in spiritual life is not being able to be frank about where you're at. And so you get all these unhealthy defense mechanisms or these smoke screens that people put up to try to hide what they're not able to be honest about. And when they're not able to be honest, there can't be growth, because as you said, they're pretending. They may be pretending that they don't have a problem. And so this is another reason why confidentiality and not being judgmental is so crucial, because people need to be honest about where they're at in order to make progress in their spiritual lives. And so we have to give them a venue to do that. We have to allow them, we have to give them a safe space to come and reveal their mind and say, I'm having a problem with this regulative principle. And so that's not to go and announce it. Can you believe that they can't follow this regular? It's to say, okay, well, what can we do to help you? I remember one time, one devotee told me that she wished that there was a devotee Alcoholics Anonymous group. And so that devotees can come together who are dealing with that problem and help each other grow and deal with that issue.
There is now.
Oh, really?
Bhakti recovery. Which is being done in lots of places. I mean, I know through the Bhakti Center in New York and other places, but yeah, Bhakti recovery, which is, working with the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is wonderful.
Nice. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. That's really great, actually. But yeah, just say that's often the crux of our problems in devotional life is the inability to be honest about it. And it could be for different reasons. We may just not want to admit that we have a problem, or we just may feel like there's no one we can go to. So devotees shouldn't have to fake it. There should always be someone that they can talk to try to work through whatever issues they're working through or things that they can't follow.
So finding an appropriate, trusted venue person.
Yeah.
Sometimes the people that are closest to you are the ones who are giving the least understanding, and sometimes to find a trusted counselor or a recovery, Bhakti recovery situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It needs to be an objective observer. It can't be someone who is somehow invested. Typically, someone who's invested in the relationship may react in a very emotional way. So you need someone who's kind of detached from the situation, caring but detached.
Wonderful. And it's great to know that there are devotee therapists that are, Andrea, you were going to say something wise.
Oh, I was going to say, which I think is what you were going to mention about the Karuna Cares.
Yeah, karunacare.iscon.org. There's a lot of information about how to deal with abuse and trauma and addiction and grief and all kinds of issues that we're all carrying. And it's an amazing program with lots of different branches that if any of you want to look into that.
And
that's great.
Some of the links in the chat as well, in case anybody is interested in following up on that for themselves.
Can we put those links in the WhatsApp group?
Yeah, I'm saving the chat and I'm gonna put a thing into the WhatsApp afterwards. And I was wondering, Rukmini Prabhu and Nanda-Nandana Prabhu, if we could get to an anonymous question that was sent to us that I think is really relevant to what a lot of people experience. So the anonymous question is how to handle someone who has jealousy, hatred, and harasses, gaslights, doesn't respect boundaries, and gossips about me. She's always confronting me in person or on social media. but in person sometimes acts like nothing happened. I tried to figure out with her what is the problem, but she takes me as a punching bag. I don't know what else to do. Should I threaten to report her?
Nanda, please.
Yeah, just a few things pop into my mind, and I guess I would need a few more details, but I guess the question would be if to report her, who would she be reported to? In other words, is it that there's stalking going on online and you would report to someone about that? And the other thing is, as I was saying before, you don't have to maintain all relationships. Sometimes the best thing to do is to walk away from someone, and that may take a little time. You may walk away from that person and not involve yourself anymore, and they're not going to like that right away. But over time, you can separate yourselves unless it becomes in-person harassment. They can be blocked. The people in the past that I decided to keep my distance from, it just kind of over time, they stopped communicating with me. And because as I said, I remember the day I decided, because the communication, no matter how I tried to communicate with them very directly and as nice as possible, they still maintained a very manipulative way of communicating. And I gave it one more chance one time through text, and it was manipulative again. And I thought, okay, this is where I draw the line. And so I just kind of walked away. But yeah, if there's harassment, that's taking it to another level. That may have to be reported. But maybe keeping a respectful distance. You say Hare Krishna when you see them, but you don't have conversations with them. And if you have to have a conversation, you exit it as quickly and politely as possible. Definitely don't share anything with them at all. They're not able to use that information properly. My guru, Hridayananda Maharaj, he said something interesting in a class once about boundaries. He said, if someone is being inappropriate with me, it's in my rational self-interest to distance myself from that person. Real compassion for that person is not to give them further opportunities to create bad karma for themselves. So actually, by not allowing people to mistreat me, I'm actually doing the best for them. And by facilitating or allowing their misbehavior, I'm actually facilitating their own suffering. And so the point is we don't have to try to fix people. And if they are unable to behave appropriately, we have every right to keep our distance, and it might actually be helpful for them. People have to start seeing a pattern in their lives that the relationships aren't working. And when they start to see that pattern, they may finally make a decision in their life to change their ways. But if people keep trying to accommodate it, it may forever to them seem like they're not doing anything wrong. Nothing's inappropriate. Because if it were inappropriate, why are they still my friend? Why are they still revealing their mind to me, and so on? So it doesn't really help them at all. But yeah, definitely keep the distance, see if it cools down. And then if it doesn't, take appropriate action, which may be reporting them online.
Thank you so much, Nanda-Nandana Prabhu. And I think in those instances too, it's something to keep in mind that we do have mediation services if it's another devotee, right? So if you don't feel like in the temple space, there's somebody that's the senior or somebody that you feel comfortable sharing. I know that there's a lot of devotees who are actually trained in mediation who can mediate the other person. I think there's like a specific name for it. Can you refer to it?
ISKCON Resolve.
Yeah, ISKCON Resolve, right.
Yeah. And Andrea, do you see Emily's question? I kind of lost it in the chat. Emily had something. Emily, way back in the chat, or Emily, if you're here, do you want to call out?
If you feel comfortable sharing it right now, yeah.
Or maybe you don't. But
I before we go to further shares, I also just wanted to point everyone to the chat. It's okay, Emily, we don't remember it. Is that as we mentioned, we are going to be sharing, and further conversations will be happening in the Urban Devi WhatsApp discussion group. And I put that in the chat. If you aren't a part of it right now, you can use those links to add yourself. And I do see that some people have started doing that. We do have two groups. We have the Urban Devi discussion group, which is where everybody is welcome to discuss and talk about topics related to urban Devi. And that's where we already got a request, Nanda-Nandana Prabhu, if you could please put your guru's quote on there, because that seems to be really resonating with people. And then we also have an announcements only group. So if you don't want to be overwhelmed with a lot of messages, which we understand, but you don't want to miss any important announcements about urban Devi, you could just join that group as well. And there's some other links there as well if you want to further support Rukmini Prabhu, like her Patreon, Urban Devi. And then I'm also going to be posting something in the chat right now. We have an Urban Devi retreat that's coming up as well. And Rukmini Prabhu can speak further about that, but I put that in the chat as well. So we have time for maybe a couple other shares or questions. Does anybody have, either you can raise your hand or unmute yourself?
Can I just ask really quickly? I'm on two groups. One is just called Urban Devi and one's Urban Devi Announcements. The one that's just called Urban Devi, is that the one you're talking about here?
Yes.
That everybody
so the one
shares
that
discussion.
just says Urban Devi is the discussion one, and then the Urban Devi Announcements is for announcements. Yeah, you got it.
I just wanted to bring up something that I mentioned in our breakout about how sometimes words have different meanings for different people. And I had this one experience once. This is something I was sharing in our breakout, that I was talking to someone who, sitting in the prasadam room, and she was kind of new to Krishna consciousness, but a very intelligent woman. And I said something about how the process of Krishna consciousness is very scientific. And I meant it kind of in a positive way, like, if you chant with attention, then you'll get some reciprocation, or that kind of thing. And somehow for her, the word scientific, and I can understand this, but for her, the word scientific had a very negative connotation. And she just sort of lashed out at me for saying that. And she's saying, no, it's not scientific at all. And I was a little taken aback, but I was just, to me, it's a very interesting thing that words may have different triggers for different people. Like for me, a certain word may be wonderful or innocuous or something, but for someone else, it may have all kinds of negative effects. So just the power of words and the misunderstanding and the assumptions about words, I think, is really interesting. The assumptions we make. I know, Braj Bihari talks about that a lot, about how the biggest obstacle to good communication is when we make assumptions about what other people are. So just even to ask, well, what exactly did you mean? I think you pointed that out, Nanda, in what you were saying. What exactly, is there something you're not saying? Or is there something that underneath here that,
Yeah, you can ask her, sounds like you've had a really bad experience with science.
Yeah.
Usually it's with religion, but, you can always ask that question. It's like, oh, you seem that seems to kind of make you upset. Did you have bad experience with science? Or maybe you're interpreting it in a different way than I'm actually meaning it. And then you can give her the Science of Self-Realization book.
Nice. What else?
I just want to quickly share that a lot of the shares that came up, and just even from us that were in the main group, seem to be that a lot of the problems come from assuming and making assumptions of people, and either starting your conversation with the assumption that you've made or that others have made of that person. So then you're reflecting it back to them, like, this is what I heard that's going on with you, as opposed to just being present and open to being curious as to what is that person's experience, and just asking it directly from them.
That's what I was just thinking. Is it because we're half listening? We're just, I'm so much on to the next thing, and I'm only half listening to you. And I'm assuming I know everything about you and what you want to share. And it's really so egotistical when I do that. And it's so, it creates such distrust and hurt feelings, really, when we do that to each other. And sometimes we do it to the people that we know the most or love the most, or care the most, or, like I know that sometimes when my husband, Anutama, when he'll be telling me something, I'll have my phone picked up to see if I have a message coming in from Andrea. And that's just so not all right, just throw that cell phone across the room and listen.
Yeah. And he's in ISKCON Communications.
Yeah.
So
we have a hand up
to communicate properly
from Chandra Vallabha Prabhu that would like to share something. Yes, Chandra Vallabha.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. So honored to be part of it. I missed a lot of Sundays because of work and other things. But this whole discussion about communication, interestingly, we communicate with different group ages of people, right? We have communication with children, we have communication with people who are clued in as far as any spirituality language, specifically devotional, Krishna conscious language, and so on. So it's always, yes, the language. And interestingly, an old series of books about how to talk to kids so they listen and listen so they talk, that it's a whole series, and there's siblings without rivalry, that sort of thing. So it could have been just as well how to talk to the emotional self, when we say to talk to children, because every one of us, and especially when people are upset, when they defensive, literally every book about communication with children applies with that to that situation. And I remember a particular point in those books about how families, and that's also communities, temples, ashrams, yoga centers, and so on, families will designate archetypes, like you're the successful one in the community, you're the pretty one. It was mocked beautifully in that Disney or something, the Encanto, right, with the song and dance, and how the whole family had that one's the strong sister, that one's the like, what are you? So I feel like to figure out the dynamic is so crucial. And once I see that, this person feels insecure because nobody gives them any responsibility. They might be part of the temple and they just come and go. Maybe they have the issues. And so no one is ever even giving them any, like, you bring this to the program because they're not going to do it. They may not show up. So to see them do something, even like fix the shoes in the shoe room, typical gesture at the temple to do, or help out in the kitchen, and just to say, thanks for that. That was so responsible of you. Or, just throw a phrase that is opposite to where they were, pardon me, duped into, and start undoing these roles. I think a lot of our communication is very nuanced. Walking into a child's room and things are sort of okay, and we're like, this is look at the spaciousness, or but without any sarcasm, obviously, but just like, this is a nice surprise, or it feels good to walk into your room today. What did you do? Open the windows? And like, no, I tied it up a bit. Oh wow, good for you. Like, not a big deal, but just like a little bit. You're not what they call you. You're not, that stuff. And because we did a lot of very grown-up commentary here, have I offended you in any way? Sort of assuming that they are also adult, but they might be in the moment when they just dropped to 5 years old in that moment.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Really was great.
It's true. We expect adults to always be like adults, and when they're, or I shouldn't say when we act on the more childlike stage, someone has to deal accordingly. And so it kind of always throws us for a loop. It's like, you're trying to respond to them like an adult, but it's not working, so that's a good point. Thank you for sharing.
And it's time for our dear Rukmini Prabhu to lead us into our announcement. But first, on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for everyone who has joined us today, and for all our first timers. I know that we have a couple that reached out to me and said this is their first time. So thank you so much for reaching out. And again, please remember that you can join us in the Urban Devi WhatsApp groups to continue this, especially if this is your first time, or if you have any questions that weren't addressed during the group, you can try to have that addressed during our discussion group. But Rukmini Prabhu, thank you so much. And Nanda-Nandana Prabhu, thank you so much. And everyone else. So Rukmini Prabhu.
Yeah, thanks. So everyone, if you like this Sangha, please register, and then you'll always get the announcements, and you'll get the whatever comes up in the WhatsApp chat. So yeah, a couple of things I just wanted to mention. So if you want to put on your calendar, where did I write it down? If you want to put on your calendar, our next Urban Devi Sangha is going to be in January. We do this once a month. And the next one is on, and it's not always the same Sunday because holidays come up and this and that. But so our next Sangha is January 22nd. And a really brilliant woman named Radha Bhakti will be speaking to us about the yoga of peace. And she's going to talk about how to stay peaceful in a turbulent world. So she's a woman who works in the professional world. So it'll be great to hear from her. That's on January 22nd. And then just wanted to mention this retreat that we're doing. And where did I write that? We're doing this retreat in Costa Rica in April. So you're all invited to please. Did you put the link in there in the chat there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and I'll put it in the announcements in the WhatsApp group again as well.
Yeah, so please look at that and think about joining us in Costa Rica. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a group of women talking about uplifting the feminine voice on the path of bhakti. We'll have yoga and we'll have swimming in the Caribbean, beautiful Caribbean water, and japa and resting and swimming and lovely vegan food that we will offer to Krishna. So please come and join us. Kirtan, we have Kylie Brown, who's a wonderful kirtan artist, is going to be leading us in kirtan. So really look at joining us there in the Caribbean in April, if it's at all possible. And please tell your friends about that. And thank you so much for sharing this time. It's wonderful to meet some of you I've never met before, and you're coming from all different places. So this is really exciting. And thank you all so much. And stay connected on the WhatsApp group, share inspirations. Anything that inspires you will inspire us also. So thank you so much for joining. And Hare Krishna.
Hare Bo. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.